Donald Trump appears in public for the first time since testing positive for COVID-19. The US president walks out of the White House to board Marine One, which has flown him to a military hospital where he'll spend several days recovering. As fighting rages on in the enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia now says it's willing to hammer out a ceasefire with Azerbaijan. This as the US Secretary of State calls on third parties to stay out of the conflict. And President Macron promises to tackle the Islamist separatism which he believes is invading France's Muslim communities. During a visit to the Paris suburbs, he's unveiled a new bill aimed at stamping out what authorities call a parallel society. Hello and welcome back to the France 24 newsroom. I'm Thomas Waterhouse. With a thumbs up to reporters, the US president strolled out of the White House unassisted earlier before being flown to the Walter Reed Military Medical Center to the north of Washington, D.C. That's where Donald Trump will be spending the next few days on the advice of his doctors after he and the First Lady both tested positive for the coronavirus. These were Trump's first words on Twitter since being diagnosed.
I want to thank everybody for the tremendous support. I'm going to Walter Reed Hospital. I think I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out. The First Lady is doing very well. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will never forget it. Thank you.
Well, Trump may well be said to be in good spirits and putting a brave face on the situation, but behind the scenes, his aides know all too well that there's now just a month to go before the US picks its next president. Jean-Émile Jamin has more.
Taking no chances. On Friday, White House officials confirmed that following his positive COVID-19 test, US President Donald Trump would be taken by helicopter to the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Maryland, where he will now spend a few days to recover. The White House had confirmed earlier that Trump felt fatigued with a mild fever and had been injected with an experimental antibody drug combination for the virus. Supporters of the 74-year-old president have since expressed their concern and well wishes, while defending him against critics who argue he hasn't taken the virus seriously.
I don't feel like he did downplay it. I think that he tried to protect the American people from hysteria and panic. He's put himself in a lot of vulnerable situations because he is the president.
It was just minor at this point, but yeah, it's concerning at that age, for sure. So I'm definitely worried about him.
The bombshell news of the president's infection appeared to have upended the White House race, merely a month before the Republican faces Democratic challenger Joe Biden at the polls. Following Friday's revelation, Trump's campaign manager Bill Stepien announced that events involving the president and the First Lady ahead of the November 3rd election would be held virtually or postponed. He added, however, that Vice President Mike Pence, who tested negative for COVID-19, would remain active. White House Chief of Staff Mike Meadows, meanwhile, attempted to allay fears that Trump would have to abandon his post altogether.
And the American people can rest assured that we have a president that is not only on the job, will remain on the job, and I'm optimistic that he'll have a very quick and speedy recovery.
The president's positive test now raises questions about whether two planned further debates with Biden will go ahead. The next debate is scheduled to be held on October 15th in Miami, with the final debate on October 22nd in Nashville, Tennessee.
Well, Donald Trump now adds his name to the list of other world figures like Prince Charles or the Brazilian president, who've all had to take time out to recover from COVID-19. James Vazina tells us more about how this deadly pandemic has changed the face of global politics.
Only a few months ago, scenes of mask-clad gatherings between state leaders would have been hard to imagine. But today, face coverings have become the norm, although adapting to social distancing isn't always instinctive. By giving up on handshakes and favouring online conferences, politicians aim to keep international relations as normal as possible in times of COVID-19.
No matter where we come from.
But finding new ways to rally voters might be one of the toughest challenges. In the United States, Democrats are resorting to phone banking and online campaigning instead of traditional door-to-door canvassing and mass rallies. tactics that differ from Republicans, who are sticking to more traditional methods. And while Donald Trump has tested positive, he isn't the only leader to have contracted the virus after downplaying its severity. The UK's Boris Johnson spent 3 days in intensive care.
I've today left hospital after a week in which the NHS has saved my life, no question.
While in Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro continued to meet voters after testing positive. He says he healed from the virus by using hydroxychloroquine. So far, there's no proof the anti-malaria drug can cure COVID-19.
There you go. I'm taking my 3rd dose of hydroxychloroquine. I feel very well.
Over in Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko says he was asymptomatic and advocated drinking vodka and going to saunas to avoid the virus. But it isn't only state leaders who've fallen ill with COVID-19. Prince Charles and Prince Albert of Monaco both recovered after developing mild symptoms of the virus.
To other world news now, and for the 3rd time in 6 days, the Russian president and the Armenian prime minister have discussed the tense situation in Nagorno-Karabakh, with Vladimir Putin once again urging calm. It's now nearly a week since renewed fighting broke out between ethnic Armenian and Azerbaijani forces over the disputed territory, and fresh clashes this Friday have pushed up the death toll again. But Armenia does now say that it's ready to work with Russia, France and the US to renew a ceasefire. Ellen Gainsford reports.
These pictures claim to show the aftermath of shelling in Stepankert, the capital of Nagorno-Karabakh. Conflict in the disputed region shows no signs of slowing. This Friday, separatist authorities claim a bus carrying Russian and Armenian journalists was hit by artillery fire. Although there were no casualties, it's the 2nd time in as many days journalists have been hit. Nagorno-Karabakh lies within Azerbaijan, but has been under the control of ethnic Armenian forces since 1994, following a separatist war. Both sides have their foreign backers. Turkey supports Azerbaijan's claims to the region and has called for the withdrawal of Armenian forces.
Azerbaycan Cumhurbaşkanı'nın söylediği gibi Azerbaycan'ın ateşkes ilan edebilmesi için Ermenistan'ın bu topraklardan çekilmesi lazım.
Azerbaijan hasn't responded to a call for a ceasefire made on Thursday by France, the United States and Russia. And Turkey has said the 3 powers should have no role in peacemaking. Armenia, for its part, is calling for Turkey to step back.
The aggressive joint actions of Azerbaijan and Turkey and the use of foreign terrorist fighters have been undermining regional security and peace.
Further complicating the conflict, Turkey stands accused of funneling Syrian jihadist militants into the region. The French president says he has evidence Syrian fighters travelled through Gaziantep on their way to the front line, a claim denied by Ankara.
A new bill will be sent to the French Parliament early next year for MPs to peruse. President Macron hopes this text will be a key tool in fighting Islamist separatism, a phenomenon that he believes has seeped into society and is threatening to take root in many Muslim communities. But some Muslim leaders have, though, come out to say that such a law isn't needed. Selina Sykes explains.
A symbolic and highly anticipated speech 2 years ahead of presidential elections. After being postponed by several months, Emmanuel Macron unveiled his plan to tackle what he called Islamic separatism.
Force est de constater qu'il y a un islamisme radical qui conduit à nier les lois de la République.
More oversight of education is at the heart of Macron's proposals.
Dès la rentrée 2021, l'instruction à l'école sera rendue obligatoire pour tous dès 3 ans. L'instruction à domicile sera strictement limitée, notamment aux impératifs de santé.
There will also be more monitoring of public services.
L'obligation de neutralité sera applicable aux agents publics, mais surtout elle sera étendue aux salariés des entreprises déléguées.
Other proposed measures include increased supervision of independent schools not following the national curriculum, more regulation of financing and influence of mosques from abroad, and asking sports organisations and other associations to sign a contract promising to respect the values of the Republic. In Les Mureaux, the suburb northwest of Paris where Macron delivered his speech, opinions are mixed.
Monsieur Macron, il est gentil, mais il y a trop de choses à faire. Il y a l'emploi qui ferme, les usines qui ferment Renault, la précarité, le logement, on n'en parle pas.
On ne doit pas faire semblant. On a un phénomène qui est visible, l'islamisme radical, qui cause beaucoup de problèmes en France, et notamment dans les banlieues comme celle-ci.
The measures will be outlined in full when a bill is unveiled in December.
The US Treasury has slapped sanctions on 8 officials from Belarus, including the country's interior minister and deputy minister, as well as a bunch of public security officials. That's in response to their alleged hand in securing President Lukashenko's re-election back in August, or for their role in the violent crackdown on anti-Lukashenko demonstrators. Catherine Kadir-Clifford has the details.
A new round of sanctions imposed on Belarus. The US has targeted 8 Belarusian officials, accusing them of involvement in rigging President Alexander Lukashenko's re-election victory or in the violent crackdown on protests that followed. It came just after the European Union announced sanctions on 40 Belarusian officials, including the Interior Minister and the head of the Electoral Commission.
Of course, we will follow closely the situation, and we hope that it will be possible for the OSCE to play a real and efficient role in order to improve the situation.
Following lengthy discussions, the bloc decided against including the country's long-ruling president. Lukashenko was spared, in line with the EU's policy of punishing power brokers only as a last resort. For French President Emmanuel Macron, it was the right decision.
I think it's a choice well taken. Why? Because we ask him to accept the mediation of the OSCE, and so to engage confidence measures, the liberation of political prisoners, and in particular his opponents in the presidential election. Sanctioning him would be, in a way, justifying a refusal to continue discussions.
Belarus was quick to retaliate, announcing its own sanctions against the EU and recalling its ambassadors from Poland and Lithuania. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry of Belarus gave no further details, but warned of more serious consequences, such as pulling out of joint projects or revising the country's diplomatic relations with the EU. Russia said it would follow Belarus's lead on sanctioning EU officials.
And finally, the President of the European Commission and the British Prime Minister will be taking part in a video conference this Saturday with the aim of mapping out the next steps to take on the road to a Brexit trade deal. Both sides have admitted that dividing lines still need to be erased as their latest round of negotiations closed with no major progress to report home about. Selina Sykes has more.
Both want a deal, but not at any price. On Friday, officials from the United Kingdom and the European Union left Brussels with no breakthrough after the final round of formal talks on a future trade deal. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said there was still scope for an agreement to be reached on future ties, but admitted that there were hard feelings over London's intention to ditch some sections of the already agreed Brexit divorce deal.
We've now experienced a certain setback in the form of a breach of the agreement we made with regard to Northern Ireland. This is bitter.
The UK's chief negotiator, Lord David Frost, and his European counterpart, Michel Barnier, said persistent differences remained between the two sides, particularly regarding fishing rules and state aid. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said both parties should move on if an agreement is not reached by mid-October, and that the ball was in the EU's court.
We're so near. We've been members for 45 years. It seems it's all there. It's just up to them.
The EU, meanwhile, has set a deadline for the end of the month in order for the deal to be signed off by member states before the end of the year.
We are still working in completely good faith to try to reach a deal. This has always been the attitude of the European Union.
Despite EU preparations in case of a no deal, there is speculation that an outcome could be reached soon, as EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is due to have a digital tête-à-tête with the British Prime Minister on Saturday.
That's all for now, but do stay tuned to France 24.